Hello everyone, my name is Ryan Cam, and welcome to Over Under 2019. What is Over Under? Well, this is my excuse to talk about movies I thought were overrated and movies that were underrated. Now, before we go any further, let me just establish my definition of overrated and underrated. Overrated to me is movies that I didn't love, but everyone else loves. And underrated are movies that I loved for one reason or another, and people didn't love. Let me make something clear right now. If a movie on this list is overrated, it is not necessarily a bad movie. Far from it. It's just that I personally didn't love it while everyone else is singing its praises. And underrated is not saying, oh, this should be on everyone's top 10 of the year list. These are movies that I liked for one reason or another and people didn't like. And now with all the grandstanding and hot dogging out of the way, let's go into my overrated first by talking about Rocketman. Now, let me make it clear. Rocketman is not a bad movie. I did enjoy it. But with everyone saying, oh, it should be on it's one of the best movies of the year. No, it shouldn't. I loved Taron Egerton in the role. I think he was really good. And I also liked the music. The rest of the movie was just kinda ho-hum. In all honesty, the music biopic has been ruined for me thanks to Patrick H. Williams' video, The Broken Formula of Music Biopics. Literally in the theater, I was doing a mental checklist watching this movie of what childhood drama, Elton John's father leaves him. What drug are they addicted to? Well, a lot of things, but cocaine. I do appreciate how Dexter Fletcher tried to incorporate more fantastical elements when covering the songs, because Elton John has made very fantastical songs. He doesn't make normal songs, and I do appreciate Dexter Fletcher for trying to inject more personality into those. But I just felt that this was a painfully generic music biopic. And I think The Life of Elton John is more interesting than what we actually got. I would much rather read like a book on his life than watch this movie ever again. Then in the underrated category, we're talking about Glass. Now, I will be the first to admit that Glass has a very bad ending. As a matter of fact, someone should make a video talking about how bad that ending is. But I think I liked Glass a lot more than others because the movie just felt different. M. Night Shyamalan has been one to take big risks and take big swings. And a lot of those swings are misses, I will be the first to admit. He's made one of the worst movies I have ever seen, and he has made one of the most laughably bad movies that I have ever seen. But at the end of the day, I do respect the fact that he always tries and does original content. And with Unbreakable, he made one of the better original movies I've ever seen. And with Split, he capitalized on that. So Glass was basically the conclusion to, I guess, the Unbreakable trilogy. And I'll be the first to say it. Glass is not a perfect movie. Again, terrible ending, and it does have a lot of Shyamalan's stilted dialogue. But at the end of the day, I certainly loved this movie more than I disliked. Next up in the overrated category is Shazam. Now, again, Shazam is not an outright bad movie. I did enjoy it. But again, the movie just felt like I've seen this all before. It was very predictable. Even down to Mark Strong playing the villain, who with the exception of the Kingsman movies has played a villain his entire career, so not much mystery there. Out of the two most recent DCEU movies that have been released, Aquaman and Shazam, I would watch Aquaman every day of the week and twice on Sunday because at least it felt different and it had a unique vision. Shazam just felt like every other comic book movie that I've seen. It just one of the same. Not a bad movie, just generic. Then in the underrated side of things, we have the Lego Movie 2, the second part. I have a soft spot for Legos and the Lego Movie and Lego Batman movie. I love both of those movies, and while I do believe that Part 2 is not better than Part 1, I still really liked Lego Movie Part 2. Not only did it have beautiful animation, but it also had a great message for both kids and adults, and one of the best parody songs that I've heard in a very long time. There is a diss from Batman against Superman that nearly fell out of my chair. I was laughing so hard. Lego Movie 2 is criminally underrated. No one's talking about it, and I think everybody should. Then in the overrated side, we have Detective Pikachu. Now, I have a feeling that this is going to stem from the fact that I've never really been a huge fan of the property before, but I just thought the movie was very meh to me. I just felt like the movie was just Ryan Reynolds doing his Deadpool shtick, but without any of the cursing. Justice Smith was there, he existed, but minus the legitimately awesome effects on Mewtwo, the movie just felt like it was there. Not a bad movie, but a very forgettable one. Next, in the underrated side of things, we have Godzilla, King of the Monsters. Now, I feel that these MonsterVerse movies are very misunderstood. Don't get me wrong, they're not exactly think pieces. They're not meant to leave you like, oh, how did this change the cultural zeitgeist? No, these are very much monster movies. But I think I love Godzilla, King Kong Skull Island, and Godzilla King of the Monsters because A, they have kick-ass battles between the kaiju, and I like the human. Do they get overplayed? Yes, I will acquiesce on that. However, there were some legitimately touching moments between the humans in Godzilla King of the Monsters, especially Ken Watanabe, who I maintain is one of the most underrated scenes in any movie I saw in 2019, where he swims down and sees Godzilla after a massive battle. He's in like this nuclear chamber trying to get his strength back, and Watanabe's carrying this nuclear device with him, and Watanabe knows this is a one-way trip. And Watanabe's character has been searching for Godzilla for pretty much his entire life, like Captain Ahab and the White Whale. And seeing what happens next is just poetic. It really is. This movie also has some of the best effects that I saw all year, and a swooping score that just gives me goosebumps the more I think about it. I will admit that this is not in my top 10 of the year, but Godzilla King of the Monsters definitely has more going for it than people are giving it credit for. The penultimate movie in the overrated category is Ad Astra. I don't get Ad Astra. I really don't. If you liked this movie and you think you have a good argument as to why this movie's actually good, leave it in the comments. I will read it. But this movie just felt about as interesting as a bowl of oatmeal with one solitary blueberry in there. That one blueberry being Brad Pitt. He was legitimately good in the movie. But his constant voiceover about literally everything got real old real quick. The thing is, though, that Ad Astra could have been far more interesting, especially with the moon lunar base, because there's a scene where the moon base has basically been turned into an airport with gift shops and everything like that. That could have been done with a bit of nice commentary, like humans, wherever they go, they always set up shop and wreck the place. But that goes absolutely nowhere, and instead we're left with Pitt's OTT voiceover and a recycled plot straight out of Apocalypse Now. Not even Brad Pitt or Tommy Lee Jones could make this interesting. The penultimate movie in the underrated category is Crawl. I love Crawl. This movie is just white knuckle from the very beginning. This movie was just so intense. And it's very taut, too. It knows exactly what it is and doesn't try to be like, oh, the environment. It's man versus nature. And that's what I loved about it. Barry Pepper's performance in this movie definitely made up for that Battlefield Earth monstrosity. So good on him for doing that. Our final movie in Overrated is Knives Out. Now, I get why people like Knives Out. I do, but I'm just not one of them. I actually went back and saw it again, and yeah, that twist that I talked about is just as bad as the first time. Rian Johnson is a competent director. The movie Looper, which I still maintain is his best movie, is very, very good and one of the better time travel movies that I've ever seen. But something about him and his meddling with the plot and subverting all of our expectations just kills the movie for me. The pieces were in play for an epic game of chess. We were sitting down and we were ready. And Johnson just like, psych, and he just flipped the board over and he's like, you figure it out. And it's just like, oh, come on, Ryan, we were right there. I don't think that Knives Out is bad. I do enjoy certain aspects of it, like the acting and the cinematography, but this could have been so much better if Rian Johnson had just focused up his story. He had one job, and he couldn't even do it. It's just beyond frustrating. And finally, in the underrated category, we have Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark. Minus a sheriff that was pretty much like a human version of Foghorn Leghorn, this movie was very, very dark. This movie was directed by this guy, but it was produced by Guillermo del Toro, and del Toro's fingerprints are all over this one. It has a sense of fun about it, but at its very core, it is a very dark story. There were scares in Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark that were more scarier than Countdown and Annabelle Comes Home combined. I'm going to spoil the movie slightly. It's nothing major, but it's about one of the kills in the movie. Basically, there's this high school bully that chases our heroes into this cornfield. And he sees this big scarecrow out there, and he's like, you damn scarecrow, and it starts taunting it. Well, long story short, the boy gets taken by the corn, and his soul is implanted into the scarecrow. I remember walking out of that like, oh my god. Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark is by no means my favorite movie of the year, but by all accounts, it should have gotten more love than it actually got, because it had originality, it had darkness to it, it had a lot of good scares, and on the whole, I just walked out largely satisfied. And that is all for Over Under. I hope you guys liked this video. If you have any movies you thought were overrated or underrated, leave them in the comments section below. I do read the comments, so please give it a whirl. And this video will be my penultimate for 2019. My final video of 2019 will be my top 10 movies of the decade list, and I look forward to talking about that. But that is all for me for now. Thank you all so much for watching. My name is Ryan Cam, and I'll see you in the next one.